Okay, hello everybody. So I'm joined by Senators Durbin, Murray, and Stabenow. Shh. Got a lot of noise down there. Okay, well, as you know, it's been a long and busy 6-week work period. We've been very productive passing legislation, getting it to President Biden's desk. Postal reform, the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, an omnibus including much-needed support for Ukraine. We continued our record-setting pace of judicial nominations, and we passed USECA again to get to conference. Hey, quiet down there. Thank you. And so much more. And, of course, this week, the crown jewel. We're on track to at least confirming Judge Jackson to the Supreme Court with a bipartisan vote, adding that to the list of accomplishments. So in the last month, when you look back at postal reform and so much else, we've gotten a whole lot done. And you know me, I'm an optimist at heart. I'm hopeful we can try to add a few more legislative accomplishments before we head back to our states. As you know, last night the Senate took the first steps towards confirming the nomination of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court. And just a few hours ago, I filed cloture on Judge Jackson's nomination. So the stage is set. People can delay in terms of time, but they can't delay the vote. And we know the vote is going to pass with bipartisan support. So the stage is set for the Senate to limit debate on Jackson's nomination by Thursday. A final confirmation vote will follow. The Senate could then vote to confirm Judge Jackson as Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson as soon as Thursday. As soon as Thursday. I can't think of a better way to wrap up this productive, largely bipartisan work period by confirming this historic nominee to the Supreme Court. There's also the possibility we can go home with another bipartisan achievement, passing COVID preparedness funding. There's no reason we shouldn't be able to get this fundamental bipartisan bill just agreed to by a group of Democrats and Republicans passed. It's vital to the future of the country. They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This bipartisan COVID preparedness bill will do both. $5 billion for therapeutics, desperately needed, and they're so good. You can take a test. If you test positive for COVID and take the therapeutic, the damage to your system is minimal. We need these drugs. We also need vaccines. We also need testing and other public health programs. $10 billion isn't enough, but we compromised with our Republican friends to get something done in a bipartisan way. It's essential to get back to normal. All those on the other side who said, let's get back to normal, should all be voting for this bill. Because if, God forbid, another variant comes and we're not prepared, we will not be getting back to normal. And the other bill the Senate passed this period is something I believe a big deal. And I wish it got more coverage from all of you. I realized it was no conflict. The shipping bill we passed is one of the best ways of reducing costs. And I hope you'll let the American people know about that. It's just not right that when an important bill passes, but it passes with no conflict, nobody writes about it. That's not the way it should be. When there is conflict, of course you should write about it. When there's no conflict and it's important, you should also write about it. Anyway, we've all seen the pictures of scores of ships lining up in ports from L.A. to Seattle to New York to Savannah. These backlogs cost the American consumer a fortune, because all the goods that are coming from overseas, or the parts of goods that are coming from overseas, become much more expensive. Shipping costs have gone up, and I may have the numbers wrong, but the magnitude is right, from about $300 a container across the Pacific to over $1,000. That's a huge expense. And now the Federal Maritime Commission, in a bipartisan bill, Klobuchar-Thune, shepherded through by Senator Cantwell in the Commerce Committee, will be able to undo those backlogs. The big shipping companies don't talk to each other. They're competing with each other. So that's very important. So, as I said, it's been a very, very productive work period, and there's a lot for members to go home and talk about. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Chuck. President Joe Biden made a strong choice to fill the vacancy on the Supreme Court. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has an exceptional resume, and literally no one has questioned her credentials to serve on the court. She went through 24 hours of questioning before the Senate Judiciary Committee. It was a real test. I want to say this about it. A majority of the Republican senators on that committee were fair and respectful. They asked tough questions, but that's their job. Unfortunately, a handful went too far in style and in substance. But that's going to happen, I guess, sometimes. I looked at the table a couple times and thought to myself, if she stood up at this point and said, enough, I'm taking my family and going home, I would have understood it. But she didn't. She was strong as can be and showed grace and dignity throughout the entire process. Her strength is what's guided her to this moment. I was disappointed that on the committee we didn't have any Republican votes. I was hoping that it would become bipartisan out of the committee. But I was heartened last night on the floor when every Democrat and 3 Republicans supported discharging her nomination to the floor for consideration today. I want to give a special shout out to Mitt Romney, to Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins. This has not been an easy assignment to step up and vote for President Biden's nominee. I respect them very much for doing so. I want to thank them as well as others who might join them. She deserves bipartisan support. Once on the court, when she starts writing her record, many who are opposing her now will realize their mistake. But for the time being, we've got an opportunity to make history with an extraordinary nominee, and I'm glad that we're going to do it this week.
Senator Murray.
Well, thank you. And I want to echo my colleagues in saying that Judge Jackson is one of the most exceptional Supreme Court nominees I've ever met with. As a former public defender, the daughter of 2 public school teachers, I think she brings a perspective that has been missing and one that really does matter. We saw Judge Jackson during her confirmation hearings. No question, she is qualified. She's absolutely the woman for the job, and I look forward to getting her confirmed as soon as possible. Now, yesterday we announced a bipartisan deal on a supplemental funding to help us keep the upper hand in this fight against COVID-19. We have made so much progress getting people safely back to school, back to work, back to their lives. And the thing I keep hearing from people in my home state is that now that things are open again, they want to keep it that way, and I couldn't agree more. Making that happen means continuing to make sure that we have vaccines and tests and treatments that are available at no cost, and that we have the resources we need to track and respond to new developments before they become disruptive. That's why I and Senator Schumer and others pressed Republicans very hard to reach an agreement on an important step to keep our nation open and to be ready for whatever comes next. There's, of course, still more we need to do to help the world in the fight against COVID-19 and to strengthen our public health and our medical preparedness systems for whatever our nation faces next. I will keep pushing for progress on that as well. This is not the end of the road, but the bipartisan deal that we announced is critical to keeping families in my home state of Washington and across the country safe, keeping our COVID response on track, and keeping our communities open. We've gotten a lot done while the Senate has been in session these past few weeks. Bipartisan postal reform, major appropriations bill. We even voted to make daylight savings time permanent. And we voted my Bipartisan Prevent Pandemics Act out of committee by a 20-2 margin. And we are still working every day to lower costs for our working families back home. I just held a roundtable last week with Senator Warnock on capping the cost of insulin at $35 per month, like he has proposed. Senator Shaheen is working on bipartisan legislation on that issue. We are working on every option to move the ball forward here and to make life better for people in Washington State, and Georgia, and New Hampshire, everywhere in America. From confirming a working mom to the Supreme Court this week to ensuring we are ready for public health threats, Democrats are delivering for people. And we're going to keep fighting to lower costs for people and families everywhere in this country on everything from child care to health care.
Senator Stabenow.
Well, thank you. And I first want to join with my colleagues in expressing my personal excitement about Judge Jackson going on the United States Supreme Court. This is a very, very historic week. I do want to take a step back, though, and just make it very clear that President Biden and our new slim Democratic majority inherited a mess a little over a year ago. We inherited a mess. At that point, there were 424,000 Americans who had lost their lives from COVID. There was $7 trillion in new debt just from the 4 years of Trump. $7 trillion in debt and 2.6 million jobs lost during the Trump years. But when Senator McConnell and the Republican leaders come to this podium, all they do is complain that we aren't cleaning up their mess fast enough. So let's fast forward to today. 7.9 million jobs have been created in a little more than a year, onto a record, possibly the strongest record ever for any president. Children safely back to school, Americans returning to their lives, their normal lives, and we certainly want to keep it that way with this COVID package. And we are delivering as Democrats every single day. Just this work period, again, critical ports and supply chain reform bill to help our farmers and to cut costs. Postal reform, talked about for 15 years, we got it done. The Violence Against Women Act, critical aid to Ukraine, an omnibus with the right priorities for people. The Intel Anti-Lynching Act, only 100 years overdue. Cybersecurity bill, bills to help veterans access life-saving cancer care, legislation to support child sex abuse victims, just to name a few things that we've done just in this last 6 weeks. So again, and that, by the way, is not counting 56 judges confirmed and counting, and a wonderful new Supreme Court justice. Bottom line is, Democrats are delivering every day.
Thank you. One more thing. I've just heard that the President is going to extend the student loan moratorium through August. This is a very good thing. Students are suffering under a huge amount of debt, and to extend the moratorium is a good thing. But, of course, I believe the President should go further and forgive $50,000 in student loans permanently. It's a huge burden on so many people. College should be a ladder up. It is all too often with student debt is an anchor down. Okay. No. Yes.
Yes, good afternoon. So Leader McConnell indicated on the COVID bill here that there might have to be some amendments, and he suggested it might be something on Title 42. Does that imperil the passage of this bill? And how do you handle this with the Jackson confirmation in the next couple of days?
Okay.
Kind of dual track these?
The bottom line is this is a bipartisan agreement that does a whole lot of important good for the American people. Vaccines, testing, therapeutics. It should not be held hostage for an extraneous issue. Yes. No. You.
The Iranian Foreign Minister was saying, today that this negotiation team would only go back to Vienna to sign a deal based on the proposals that's already submitted, and they're not going to negotiate with the U.S. and other world powers on Iran's nuclear deal. Now that the negotiations seem to be stalled, what do you think about
Well, I don't know. I'd have to get a briefing on what happened to give you an answer to that. Yes, sir.
Senator, would you allow an amendment process, though, on that bill?
As I said, this is a bipartisan bill. It was negotiated in good faith. It should not be held hostage to extraneous, unrelated issues. Last one.
It's been more than a year since you announced your intent to reveal comprehensive marijuana reform. When are you planning to announce that legislation and put it on the Senate?
We hope to do that towards the end of April. Senator Booker, Senator Wyden, and I are talking about it. And, in fact, we're trying to reach out. I've reached out already to a few Republicans to see what they want. Last one.
Reconciliation. I'm curious if you have a time frame as to when you'd like to get this done. Does it have to be done by the Congress recess, for instance?
Well, we want to get it. Look, there are lots of talks going on right now. They're not in a great degree of granularity. Once we finish Supreme Court, they may pick up pace. We'd like to move a reconciliation bill and go as far as we can, get as much done as we can with 50 votes. Thank you, everybody.
Have you seen the Capitol clock?